Welcome to the Rest Round with Butch Hiles and Gary Hashman.
And everybody's got a belt.
Yeah.
Well, where's yours?
Hang on.
Yeah, there it is. All
That's
right,
perfect.
so guys, we're gonna go ahead and get into it. Obviously, we all have belts here. Another episode of the Rest Round with Butch Hiles, Gary Hashman, and today our guest is Jake Iannarino. He is a very, very funny comedian. I believe he was the youngest person admitted into the Midwest comedy.
Oh, you're old bio, man. A lot.
Oh, is that the old one? I want to cover it all, brother. But it's like the Midwest comedy tour or something. Tool and Die.
Yeah. They were an improv group that was around for years. They got really pretty popular. So I was like 17 when I got in this improv group.
So you've been doing comedy forever. I'm gonna keep going down the list, and then we're gonna talk about it all. I promise. But you've been doing comedy since you were 17. You've been in, major feature films. You were in The Hot Chick, The Animal, I think, with Rob Schneider. You've done a ton of stuff, lots of YouTube stuff now. You're a comedian, touring the nation. You can kind of find him everywhere. I am happy to know you. I actually met Jake through jiu-jitsu, and I've been watching him on TikTok lately, and I kind of just sniped him and said, "Hey, you need to come on the podcast." And he was like, "Okay, I'll do it." So I appreciate you being here, man, and I'm excited to have you. So, like we've talked about before, this is all about self-betterment, self-improvement. Starting comedy at 17, is that when you started, or how old were you when you first got on stage?
Like 17. Yeah.
Okay.
And then and like even my last 2 years of high school, I think I was out doing gigs at night and kind of sleeping through class, but I had enough credits pretty early because I went to DeSales my first 2 years, and I was in all the moron classes. Like I thought I might have been head damaged or something, but then I transferred to Northland, and they gave me this aptitude test, and they were like, "You're a genius, man. You're in all the smart classes." So it's funny. I think there's a big difference between public and private schools, because like I had way too many credits. I got there and I just sort of coasted through my last 2 years, did comedy at night. I had like 4 gigs a weekend in Columbus. And then I was in this group that had a touring group, an improv group like Who's Line, and another group that toured, and one that stayed in town. And I was doing both. When I was on break and stuff, I'd go on the road with these guys. I was a kid. I didn't understand, like I was too young to understand how cool that even was. Like I thought, oh, this is just, I want to make money, and I'm just going to make money. I'm pretty funny. I'm just going to do this. And I auditioned for this group, got in, started working, did the road for a lot of years, moved to Los Angeles and for a while, and that's where I got in the Adam Sandler movies. Crazy, just sort of dumb luck. I was at some bar doing comedy one night. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I asked to get 5 minutes, and some woman was in the crowd that was like this Hollywood ass kicker, and she comes up to me and she says, "I'm your manager. We're gonna get some shit done." And she did. She got me in movies and record deal and TV and all kinds of stuff. She was really effective. But then she retired, and now I live in the gutter.
That often happens when great people retire. That's not very fun, is it? It sucks.
No. Yeah. When your team retires, it's not good. But
I was going to say, well, let's kind of talk about that a little bit. So you're, late teens, early 20s. And is that when you're moving out to LA and you're doing all that stuff?
Man, my memory's pretty fuzzy. I was out in LA twice. It chewed me up and spit me out twice. But I still go back there. I still got friends there, and I work out there sometimes. I love LA. It's not the town it used to be, but it's still LA. It's a lot rougher now.
Right.
But it's a magic city. Like any crazy shit happens there. you know?
Right. Well, and I'm just curious, is it like, do you realize how hard you were working on your craft when you were that young, or was you just doing what was fun?
I was just doing what was fun, man. I wanted to get on stage and make people laugh. And I didn't even think of it as work at all. Like, I just loved it so much, and I still do. I'm on the road a lot now. I just did the Improv in Cleveland, and then I headlined the Syracuse Funny Bone this week. Where am I this week? Uh, 31 West, Work, Ohio this weekend. So I'm working harder than ever. And I still love it. I still couldn't imagine doing anything else, really. I can't believe I get paid to do it.
Well, and I think that's something that kind of like, I'm always looking for the crossroads of different people's success, right? And I think that's a big thing that you were asking a little bit ago about how long it takes to get a black belt. To be honest, I don't know. All I know is I just kept showing up at jiu-jitsu because it was fun. And then it seemed somewhere around into blue belt that everybody started looking at me as like, hey, you're one of the guys who's here all the time. You help out all the time. I'm going to start asking you the questions. And now I'm a purple belt. I'm a brown belt. And it just kind of happened. I wasn't even aware. I knew what level I was. I knew the people that I was rolling against. I knew the competition that I was facing. And I felt the ramp up in competition, but it really never felt out of the ordinary. Everything just felt like this is just another day of me doing this silly thing that I like to do. And it sounds like you that's kind of a mirror image, you in comedy and me in jiu-jitsu. Is just like, I just kept showing up.
Yeah, you got to be relentless. I mean, I was driving at one point, I think I was just out of high school. I was driving like every night, 3-4 gigs a night, all night. I never stopped. It was crazy. You know, the funny thing about jiu-jitsu, not to change the subject, but any other martial art, you're excited to get your belt. And then jiu-jitsu guys are like, oh shit, oh man, I'm fucked. Isn't that fun?
No, it's a solid point, right? Like, and then I think Gary and I probably give similar speeches, right? Like just to somewhat be funny, but somewhat say like, you know, look, now you've got a target on your back, right? Here, I'm giving you a blue belt, your purple belt or whatever, but now the target becomes bigger. And we say that again, kind of in jest, but also because it's true, right? Like when you go into a gym, if I'm visiting a gym, like if I'm going to Ohio and you show up in a blue belt or purple belt, like the whole room's like, okay, fresh meat, plus he's from a different gym. So I've got to test myself against this guy. I've got to see what's up. So as the guy that's on vacation and just wants to go in, work out, like it's not what like you think it is, right? Like if you know, like if you're going in that mindset, for example, you know, I went to Florida and worked out, I'm sorry, with a couple of my friends. And obviously I'm a black belt, but let me take a drink real quick. Sorry.
Let's all do that. Let's all do
Yeah. Well, hopefully I can talk without coughing, but that's part of the thing is like I would try to come in and slow play it, right? And not say what belt I am. Don't even wear a belt, right? Because I know that if I do, and I'm not trying to sandbag or cheat, that everybody's going to come after me. And so the experience is going to be different. So what I try to do is just slow play it because they're going to figure it out anyway, right? So I go in, don't wear a belt. You know, if I can get through the whole thing, whatever. And of course, that's what most gyms do, send like their blue belts after you, and their purple belts, and then their brown belt, and they just kind of escalate it, right? And so I'll kind of go along with the trip, but I'm also not trying to kill anybody. I'm going really easy. So like if I'm going with a blue belt, I'm just showing that I've got talent. And then of course I can see out of my peripheral vision that they're watching. So they send somebody else. And then all of a sudden you get those questions. What belt are you? And I'm like, well, listen, man, I own a gym in Charleston, West Virginia. I'm here just to work out. Like, like let's kind of start this conversation correctly. And then it just depends on what happens, right? It depends on also how I'm rolling. Like if I'm being an ass and just tapping these blue belts and purple belts and making their school look, for lack of a better word, like bad, which then you don't need to do that, right? Because now you're going to get destroyed. They're going to send in the mad enforcer, you're going to do all that stuff, right? It's not fun. And like, I'm here to have a good time. It's like, I want to train with people. It's like, so that's my theory, is that I try to start it off and just like you said, like in a good thing. And then by the end, hopefully we're all having fun. And 9 times out of 10, we are. But you're right. It's like, it's just is what it is. Like if it's basketball and I show up and I'm Michael Jordan, we're in a pickup game, and all of a sudden like people are like, oh, look at that guy, right? Like they can send people after you, but it's just basketball. It don't matter. Like, right. And jujitsu, when they send somebody after you, like it depends on what that guy's agenda is. Is he gonna break my ankle? Is he gonna just tap? You know what I mean? Like it's not as good. Or is it somebody like Gary that's gonna smash you and you can't breathe for the whole time? Such a
Yeah.
lovely art, right? It just is what it is, right?
Yeah, it's amazing to like almost a superpower. I find I am completely fascinated by jujitsu just in general. I never seen anything quite like it. But I haven't seen. I've been training for years. I'm still like a 4-stripe white belt. I haven't got my blue belt, thankfully. But I've noticed I haven't seen a lot of bad, like aggressive, ego, negative events on the mats at the school I go to, anyways. The Helson Gracie in Columbus. That I've seen little to none. Like everybody's really cool. It seems like even when I went and trained in California at Crone Gracie's place, everybody was totally cool. Friendly, helpful, took it easy on me. If they were a higher belt, like I've seen not a lot of negativity in the jujitsu community in general. Have you ever seen stuff like this?
We've seen both, right? But I think it goes to the instructor, meaning that, you know, I always kind of say this, the top down, right? Like if your instructor is a douchebag, then the gym's going to be filled with douchebags, right? And I've seen that 100%. Like I can tell, like there's some gyms that I know, they have douchebags and they have good people. And I can tell literally which student, like who they're following by how they act. Like if the gym has an asshole and a nice guy, and I run into somebody at their gym and they're an asshole, I'm like, oh, this guy must be your friend. Like I could tell right away, right? Like, and that's how it is. So I think, like, do you train? Am I guessing right? Do you train at Robbins in Columbus at that
Yeah,
Helson?
there in a while, but yeah, I'm actually setting up some privates. I'm going to dip my toe back in.
Well, and that's why I mentioned it, because he's a super nice guy, right? He's a great guy. And I don't know him personally. I mean, he wouldn't know me if I met him, but we've talked online, and I follow his Instagram and social media and stuff. And that dude is awesome, like awesome, great information on his podcast, great posts. And again, I think I've met him personally a couple of times. Super nice guy. So like that makes sense. You're in a great environment, and luckily not part of the old Cobra Kai for Karate Kid, because I think the new Cobra Kai is kind of cool, I guess. But you know, the old one was not as cool, right?
Well, I don't think train at a gym with any sort of bad vibes at all. I think I'd probably would lose interest in jujitsu, probably, you know.
Well, and you know, we talk about in jujitsu, we talk about weeding out the assholes. Like that's a big thing. We weed out the assholes in jujitsu, and for the most part, that's true. I think it can change a little bit when you're talking about the competitive side. I know, and we've talked about it on here, but like I know I'm not a nice guy when I'm getting ready for a big competition. You don't want to be if you're one of my regular training partners and I'm ready for a competition, then it's going to be a lot of me smashing you, because I want to train the way I want to compete. But when it comes to just general classes, like Butch was saying, like whoever the instructor is, they need to snuff that out before it gets crazy. And it's really about making sure everybody feels welcome and invited. If you get somebody, it's a hard thing to do, because you've got 23-year-old college students who used to play high school football and 47-year-old you know, whatever it is, IT workers who are at the hospital and have 3 kids, and their goals are completely different. They're coming in for different reasons, and to try and create an environment where they both can learn and get what they want out of jiu-jitsu is difficult. So it really comes down to the instructor of making sure that people are going with like-minded people. You know, if you're here for learning self-defense and hobby, that is, you know, a physically taxing hobby, then we're going to make sure that you roll with other like-minded people. If you're 20 something and you're ready to go in and you think in ADCCs, well, let's go ahead and find you other like-minded people. You just have to, that's where the instructor part of it really has to come into play. I kind of want to circle back though to the comedy aspect of this, because with you going into comedy, and we were talking about the assholes, right? Did you ever feel like there was anybody in comedy, or was there a time in comedy? Joe Rogan's kind of talked about that, the famine thinking that was in comedy at one point. And did you ever feel that, like, you would go into a town and everybody was fighting for the same, like, hey, I need to get my own TV show or anything like that? Or has comedy always been somewhat welcoming and inviting to you?
Oh, wow. LA's pretty cutthroat. I don't know about New York. I tend to stay out of the city. I play Long Island and places like that a lot, Jersey. But yeah, I think comics in general are pretty cutthroat, man. I think there's a lot of assholes in the comedy world. Holy shit. We don't even have time in this podcast.
So it has been somewhat confrontational as far as, like, is it like the idea of getting spots, or what about it is the hard part? What are the fights that you get into?
Oh wow, I didn't know you were going to hit me with these questions, man.
Yeah.
Ego, I've worked with a lot of famous people. I've opened for pretty much, I think most of the big famous acts. There's a handful that I haven't, but I've worked with a lot of people, man. Most are pretty cool, but comics in general, I think you got to be kind of fucked up to be a comic,
You do.
This is, how do I explain?
Just so you know, too, let me give a preface. Sorry to interrupt, but we joke about this for jiu-jitsu or MMA, that most people that like to get punched in the face are fucked up, right? So the same goes with comedy, right? Like we get it, right? Like I think all of us listen to Joe Rogan podcast too, and then he explains that most comedians got depression. Like how many comedians committed suicide that we know of in the last 5 years, right? Like it's
Great one.
Like it's an ungodly amount, right? So we know that they're fucked up. As with us, jiu-jitsu and MMA, especially MMA more so than jiu-jitsu because of the head trauma, but I know we get it. Like we're on it. Like it's crazy, right? And rather whatever it is, like we can all pretend we're psychologists today, but we don't know. Rather it's the need for attention, that something happened or whatever. But I think the Joe Rogan thing makes us, like, I know I've done comedy a few times now because of that podcast, and so have other people. Like I think we all just want to be clones of Joe Rogan. Like I'm joking, but kind of serious, right? so sorry. I just wanted to preface that, as we know, I think we know. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I've met like a lot of famous people I've met are really cool, like the really top level successful comics. A lot of them couldn't be cooler, but then some are unbearable assholes. Sure, ego and they'll screw you over. They'll steal things from you. They'll
you say steal things from you is like jokes, you mean, or like
jokes, scripts,
really?
TV ideas, movie ideas. I mean, I don't know if you say you watch Joe Rogan. I don't know if you watched the one with Jim Brewer. I just worked with Jim. I just did a couple of shows with Jim Brewer. His whole story about how cutthroat the writers' rooms were.
Saturday Night Live, right? Correct.
And like, I didn't know it was that bad. It's pretty awful. But yeah, man, the comedy definitely has an ugly side. Like if you're really in the business and you're down and dirty, doing a lot of gigs and working with a lot of people, traveling around, doing the big clubs, the Funny Bones and Improvs. I work with huge acts there, and I'm usually relieved if they're cool, to be honest.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like, and I don't know how it would be different with like a touring, like music artist or anything like that, but like every other week you're somewhere, every week you're somewhere else. It's a different venue, it's a different manager, it's a different spot, and like you're I don't know. It's not like going to your regular job where you have the same boss every night, or you have the same, like you're in a different situation every night you perform. And so what is that like? Like, are you somewhat of a chameleon? Are you trying to like, how do you approach the whole, like, hey, I'm at a new club and I'm making these new relationships with club owners or whatever? Are you trying to chameleon yourself a little bit to kind of make things go smoothly, or are you just like, this is Jake and this is who you get?
Well, I try to be professional as much as I can, but most club owners that have worked with a lot of comedians know that it can be annoying sometimes, depending on who you're working with. A lot of them can be like diva shit at the high level. You got a guy like me, I'm easy going. If you got me at your club, it's going to be an easy week. You're not going to have any drama or bullshit, man. And I'm not going to ask you for crazy shit in the green room and shit. I'm not going to bang a waitress or anything in the green room. I'll if I'm going to do that, I'll be a gentleman and get a hotel room, you know. But I have it's the bar gigs that you got to worry about, where it's like some bar owner who doesn't understand anything about, he's just like, I'm going to have comedy, but he doesn't have the sense to turn the football game off. So he's got watching football and shit while you're on stage. It's very insulting to the artist, I think. And I see this shit all the time, crazy shit. Like guys will have the jukebox on. I'm like, hey man, what's going on here? We're not like a guitarist in the corner. We need like focus and shit. I've run into some crazy nights where I was just like, man, I'm just going to do my time, get my money, go home, and never come back to this shithole ever again in my life. But most gigs are pretty good. Even a lot of the bars I play these days, I'm doing a lot of breweries and wineries. They're pretty smart. I haven't run into these problems very often in the last like year. Seems like after COVID, everybody got their shit together and is trying harder, you know. And the shows are pretty good. Especially, you live in Charleston, you said?
Yeah, West Virginia.
Nice, beautiful. I don't know that there's a comedy club in Charleston there.
There's not anymore, but there was. It was called the Comedy Zone, right? And those are typically franchises, right? Which I'm glad that you asked, because I wanted to ask, and I didn't know where I'd fit this in, but like when you work at the Funny Bone, for example, like Columbus is amazing, right? Like when I look at their lineup, like they just had Miss Pat there. I love Miss Pat. Jim Brewer was there not long ago, as you mentioned. But so when you get on with a Comedy Zone or slash Funny Bone, or you know, whatever there is, so are you on that circuit or not really? Or can you be on that circuit by signing a contract? Or
I think a lot of the big names are on the circuit. I'm kind of what they do with me at the Funny Bone a lot and the improvs is I'll work with different acts all the time. They'll have some big name headliner and they'll have me do like 25 minutes before him. But I'm not like on the road with a certain act all the time. But I'm also a cleanup man. Let's say that headliner doesn't show up or gets sick or says, hey, there's a football game on. I'm going to step in and fill in and headline those nights. But it's not like a lot of my bookings are like for the big clubs are last minute, crazy enough.
really?
Yeah, my last couple big gigs, I'm talking big clubs, were both fallout. Something happened. I'm not sure what happened in Cleveland, but they brought me in. And in the Syracuse Funny Bone, they had me fill in for Tracy Morgan because I don't know why he took the night off, but he said, I'm not coming. So they called me to headline. Jason Banks, he's a big comic now. He got COVID. So, I mean, they had already sold tickets for this act. So you got to go in knowing, you know, half the crowd's going to be bummed out. The guy they really wanted to see isn't there. So you're kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit, but it's still awesome work. The Funny Bones, the improvs, the Comedy Zones. I don't play the Comedy Zones, but I hear they're really nice too.
Yeah, and I would think that it's a little, I liked it. So I would go all the time. I'll be honest. There was a girl that I was dating before. I'm married now, but my wife will probably be pissed that I mentioned another girl, but nonetheless, right. Some girl introduced me to comedy and she's like, hey, I go to this Comedy Zone every now and then. That's the only thing right now, actually, in West Virginia. It's the only place that's it's closed now, but after COVID and everything, but that was consistent. And they did not have big name talent, right? There's never a time that you're going to see Tracy Morgan, right? Or anybody of that caliber, not like a Funny Bone. For example, there's another town in West Virginia called Huntington.
Yeah, there used to be a Funny Bone there. I used to play.
Absolutely. And I don't know if this is what happened or not, but I'm not, and I don't have a big story, so it's not that, but I'll just preface this. It closed down shortly after Andy Dick grabbed somebody's dick. Let's just put it that way. Like
He's done that a bunch of times, man.
Exactly. And that's part of his like persona, right? Like he's crazy, he's bisexual, he's funny, right?
I don't book the guy. If I'm a club owner, there's no fucking way I'm booking a guy like that.
Well, yeah. And then you go into the Bible Belt of West Virginia, right? And apparently the story that I know, I don't know the whole story, but the story I know is that he was probably just fucking with the bouncer. So he grabbed the bouncer's dick and did some other shit that I don't think he really meant, right? He's probably being funny. That's what he does, right? But then I'm guessing this person saw dollar signs, right? And then did other stuff. And again, I don't know. Like, so everything I just said could be not true, but I do know that's kind of the thing. And I'm telling you, like, I love that place. Like, I loved it, Sorry.
If Dick tried to grab your dick, would you think that shit was funny? I wouldn't.
If it was Andy Dick, like I'd just be like, I know this is what you do. Like, don't grab my dick. If you do it again, I'll punch you. I'd set clear boundaries, right? Like, but I would preface it with, I've heard all the story. I've seen you on Howard Stern. Like, I know what you do. Like, I know who you are, right? But I also agree. Like, that is, I'm moody. I'm a moody person, right? Like, some days I would let somebody grab my dick go, and then some days somebody would grab my dick and I'd bite their nose off, right? Like, unfortunately, that's my dilemma. That's my dark person. Like, that's unfortunately, that's my bad thing. But again, yeah, I don't know, but nonetheless, it's sad because that was a beautiful club and it was a beautiful to see actual big name. I remember they had like, was it Mike Epps? That's another comedian that's famous. Yeah, they had like a bunch of people. And I saw one of the best things that I ever saw in my whole life at this comedy club, meaning that like we were there, me and my friend would go all the time. And one night we were there and, nobody famous was headlining, but anyway, this girl was heckling and she wasn't doing nothing too crazy, but she was just like the guy would say jokes and then she'd be like, woo, like say a bunch of stupid shit, just stupid. She was trying to impress her friends. And the guy's like, man, like he let it slide forever. And then he's like, man, if you do this again, we're going to have a problem. Right. So she was quiet for like 5-10 minutes. And then of course he said something. She made that same noise. And that guy was like, he just went on this tirade that was the best. Like me and my friend were laughing so hard, like where he was like, you stupid fucking bitch. I hope a horse with a giant cock splits you in half and you fucking die and the cum comes out your throat. I mean, it went on and me and my friend were like, because that's the comedy I'm into, right? Like we are dying, right? And then he's like, now get the fuck out. And then the security grabbed her and took it. It was like, and there's only like 10 of us in the club. So like she was like one of the 10, right? Which is another reason the place closed, because besides Andy Dick, there wasn't like a lot of people there, but it was to this day. I mean, that was probably 20-25 years ago. It was the most epic destruction of a heckler that I ever saw. And I don't know who it was or, what his name was, but he destroyed this woman where it set a precedent. Do not open your mouth against a comedian when all you have is woo, right? If that's your only joke, woo, shut your fucking mouth because they're going to destroy you. And it was beautiful, like pure beauty. Like, and it hurts my heart that place is closed, right? Like that I don't have video of that moment, but it reminded me too, like these people are professionals. Like I don't heckle people, but if I were, that changed my life, right? How do you, I guess that's a good segue to how do you deal with that? Like, do you have some some zingers that you come up with, or is it individual? Like, I'm going to destroy this man or woman. They made a bad mistake right now.
Yeah, I don't have like heckler lines. I just go with them. Usually I don't get heckled a lot. People are usually pretty cool with me, but now and then I will. And if they annoy me, I have lost my temper like that, because it is insulting, but if worse comes to worse, I play guitar on stage. So if they really keep fucking around, I can just write a song on the fly about what a piece of shit they are, just looking at them. I won't even, it's not like a pre-written song. It's like you said, individualized for each asshole.
Which is amazing. Like, that's all. So you have musical talent on top of comedy, obviously.
Well, I'm faking it. I can look like I know how to play guitar.
That reminds me of Gary. Like, for jujitsu wise, he looks like a fucking savant with a guitar, but who knows, right?
Yeah.
Three chords and a smile, man. That's all I got.
Yeah, it's all confidence, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually kind of curious, is like, when it does come time to something like that, or just in comedy in general. I know you started off with an improv group. How much of your comedy, obviously you have, people talk about putting together an hour or whatever. How much of your comedy is improv? How much of it is stuff that you've already been working on? These are jokes that you've put through the ringer, you've tried to cut the fat out of, you have those solid, and then you're into your, hey, I'm just riffing.
It depends. Usually I try to keep it like 50-50. But like last Saturday, I was at a VFW in Mansfield, Ohio, and it was all just old grizzled vets drinking hard, and they were talking to me, not heckling me. They wanted to talk. So I kind of threw my act out, and I must have been like 35 minutes just conversationally, because my improv training, I can kind of go with whatever happens pretty comfortably. And I must have done 35 minutes without a single joke from my act, just fucking around with these vets, man. They were just fun, rowdy, drunk. It was actually a pretty awesome show. And I didn't have to burn my act. So if they book me again in 3 months, I haven't even done my act yet. It's beautiful.
That is awesome. Go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, but if you were in a club, like let's say you're playing the Funny Bone, how much of it, you said it's going to be 50-50, or if you're playing a club like that, is it a little more?
Yeah, it's a little
structured?
more. Yeah, I still do a lot more than the average like headliner or middle as far as crowd work goes. But some nights I'll just do material. I'm generally pretty loose though. Generally, I like to kind of just work with what's happening in the room, or who's in the front row, or I get like distracted easily and go off, and it's kind of a gift.
Well, and I would say also, like, just knowing you, that's kind of like, it always feels like you're in the present. Every time I've ever talked to you is like you're in the moment that is now. And so it makes sense that your comedy I mean, I don't think you're ever off. I think you're always thinking of the funny stuff, right? And it's not that you're trying to be funny. I think you just are. But you always are in the present. And I think it makes sense that you're more improvisational when it comes to comedy, because it's how you are.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of taking who Jake is and trying to push that? Because a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about comedy, and should comedy have a message, or what is comedy for? Is this just your self-expression along with a way of, this is my job, but it's also my self-expression? Or, I mean, there's a lot of questions I can ask, because I do that with jiu-jitsu too, right? Like, I am kind of a laid back guy. And when I'm not competing, my jiu-jitsu is very like, hey, you can come to side control. I'm just going to work with you. And so my jiu-jitsu now reflects a lot of who I am, like just in my personal life with people. I think I'm a pretty nice guy. I try to be sociable. I try to help people. And so my jiu-jitsu reflects that when I'm not competing. Obviously it's different when competition comes around. I have to be a little more of an asshole, but I see that in most people in just everything that they do, regardless of the job. Some people are more sociable, some people are more reserved. That's why we have accountants. You know, like the job kind of fits your personality. Do you see the different? Is there a difference in comedians and how they approach comedy? Obviously, they have different jokes, but it's not just about the jokes; it's about the personality that comes behind it.
Yeah, I think on stage, I'm just me sort of exaggerated, me cranked up to 10 a little bit, you know. But my act is not really, the shit I do on TikTok's very different than my act. My act is pretty user friendly. I don't get too political. It's more like sort of a party. I'm trying to have fun with everybody, bust people's balls in the audience and shit, and it's just everybody having fun. But I don't like avoid politics for any particular reason. I just don't think it's. I don't have fun talking about it on stage. I have more fun just fucking around and having a good time. And I found a way to make money doing this. It's funny, like I was partying really hard when I was younger. I was just drunk every night, drinking a bottle of whiskey on stage, just partying my balls off. And then I quit drinking. And it was weird. I didn't realize how much of alcohol I was using for my job. Like I'd be doing shots on stage and I'd get people in the crowd, hey, everybody doing shots. It would get wild, you know, but I was also some nights really funny. And then some nights just kind of sad. But when I quit drinking, I was like, holy shit, I've got to be funny now. Like I can't fake it. Like I have to have that good of a time without the alcohol. So it was kind of weird to transition into that because I didn't realize how much of my act was just getting fucked up. Like that was literally my act for like a few years. But now I don't drink anymore, and I don't, you know, I'm not really into it. But I can't believe I found a way to make money just sort of having fun. And like you said, with jujitsu, all I'm doing is showing up and having fun, man. And I found a way to make it work. It's kind of crazy. Like when I really think about it, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that like this is my job. Like up in Cleveland at the Improv, it's a urban room, it's a black club, and it's Cleveland. So you better be fucking funny, man. Or they'll heckle you, they'll yell shit. One guy's on stage, he said, I got 3 daughters, and somebody in the crowd yelled, fuck your daughters. It's like kind of room, man. You got to bring it. And I was on stage just killing, and everybody's having a great time. Loved it. One of the best nights I ever had. And I was thinking, this is an amazing job I have, just entertaining people, black, white, doesn't matter. Just taking like a moment, even if it's just like a half hour on stage. Like when I see people laughing, like really just laughing, I know at that moment they're not worried about their bills and their problems and their bullshit. It's comedy's sort of an escape. And I try to make it so people can just put all that to the side and really just let themselves laugh. I think laughing's beautiful, man. It's healing, and it's to me it's like a drug. Because you've done stand-up, you know what I mean? Like if you get a laugh, you're like, holy shit, man, I got to get another one of those. Like if you tap somebody out, you're like, oh man, I got to do that shit again. That was fun. That's
well,
how
even when you're busting balls at work, right? Like if you're sitting around with the guys and you crack a good joke, right? It feels good, and you hope that like, oh man, I hope I come up with another one later on.
Yeah.
You know, so like, you know, Timmy, he's kind of slow. That's the reason he writes with crowns or whatever it is. You know, like that, like you get the zinger in, and you're like, it felt good. Everybody kind of laughed. You want another one of those later on.
You do. It's magical. Comedy's really to make somebody laugh with your words. I think it's crazy to go. I'm gonna do that for a living. That's gonna be my job, is to just say funny shit. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm glad I was so dumb as a kid not to realize what an impossible thing I've accomplished, because I've made a living doing this. I bought a condo. I got a couple cars. I may not be a household name, but I've done stuff for TV, film. I've done everything I wanted to do, you know, and I'm doing all right. So it's kind of crazy to think about. Like, I don't know if somebody would have sat me down when I was like 17 or 16 and explained to me, dude, do you know you're going to have to bust your ass every night out at these shitty clubs. It's going to be hard. You're going to be on the road all the time. You're not going to have a route on your tour that makes sense. You're going to be zigzagging 12 hours every direction, every other. Like I probably would have gone, wow, that sounds terrible, but it's not. It's awesome. You know, it ends up.
And we talked about this earlier, but all of us, well, Gary and I for sure, I haven't talked to you about, but we listen to Joe Rogan, right? Like, and I think, you know, and the reason is because he's our meathead god, right? He trains jiu-jitsu, he commentates MMA, and then addition, that's the thing that drew most of us meatheads in. Then in addition, he does other stuff, right? He does comedy, and we get to learn about that stuff. So, you know, and I joked about this before, like when we first got on, and behind me is Stephan Bonner's Trunks, who's an MMA legend, right? And my good friend, but he also started doing comedy. And I think that's what happened, is that for all of us that did jiu-jitsu and MMA, especially for him, like he was an MMA guy, when he lost that, when he retired, like he lost that adrenaline and that thing that made him, right? Like, meaning that, like, especially Stephan, you know, I'll talk for him a little bit, which makes me feel weird, but you know, he was a guy that traded punches back and forth, and that's what he's known for. So the adrenaline rush for him must have been unreal, right? Because he wanted to get into a scrap and a fight that was just crazy, and everybody tuned in, and that's what he loved. He drew you into a fight that was a brawl, basically. And then after that was over, he had an empty spot in himself, right? And again, I apologize for talking for him, but obviously he's not with us anymore. So I'll do my best. But I think what filled that void was comedy, because you're also bearing your soul. You're coming up with a plan, you're putting it on stage, and it's going to be liked or not liked. And then for you guys that are professionals, you can adjust, right? Like for maybe like an amateur, like if you had a plan, you went together and you went on stage and maybe you bombed, right? But you weren't good enough to kind of change that plan and do that. But that's maybe what drew Stephan into the comedy world. And so, you know, before he died, this is what he was doing. And I've kind of followed that a little bit. I've only done a few things, and I'm probably done with the stuff, but I knew that it gave him a lot of joy. And one of the things they did in Las Vegas, which I really think was cool, it kind of goes off on what I was saying, but a little bit different. But he would do these nights in Las Vegas where they would make all the comedians do mushrooms, right? And then they would have to do the comedy, which I think is hilarious, right? And so I asked him about that a couple of times, and because he also was like, I think he enjoyed you know, the scary aspect, meaning like if I would, and then the times I have did comedy, right? I came up with a plan. And the thing about comedy is it needs to really be worked in front of people. Like, just because I think it's funny, it doesn't mean that the crowd's going to think it's funny, right? Now, luckily, when I'm saying this, I'll be honest, like I did it in front of my gym because I knew that was a good audience to start with. They're going to laugh at anything I say anyway, because I run the fucking gym. So I had already a plan worked out, and it was all about jiu-jitsu and MMA. So listen, like when I say all this stuff, let's preface it with my stuff was probably 10% of what you do, if not 5%, if not 1%, right? Like I had some outs, right? But the point with him was he actually would a lot of times not have a written thing and go up, just like you're saying, do some crowd work. And that means you're really funny. Like he would go up and do some stuff. And I asked him, I was like, well, what's it like on shrooms when you do that? Because that sounds crazy. And he's like, well, first of all, everybody knows I'm on shrooms. So like automatically they're going to like if I come up and I'm like, well, Jesus Christ, like you all look like fish right now. He's like, then they're going to all laugh, right? Like, because they don't know what I'm seeing, right? So he's it actually kind of helps a little bit. But, you know, I'm like, it was really fascinating for me as an outsider to watch him work through the process that you guys have down. And of course, again, you know, and I'm giving a full credit to Joe Rogan. Like he drew us in with his meathead stuff. And then we get to hear about all the stuff that you guys do. And and some of us get to dabble around with it a little bit. It's just another thing that's hard, that I think we enjoy. And it's fascinating to me to hear, somebody like yourself, like talk through the things that we're all trying right now, that we're all fascinated with. That's a different world, but it also goes back. And I think the thing that fascinates us all is that I think before Joe Rogan and before the things that we heard, we just assumed you're funny. And because you're funny, you just got on stage and it was magic, right? And then, to what this podcast is about, then we learned, no. Like, you've got an ideal, you've got a premise, but you got to develop that. And the only way to develop that is to become a white belt at comedy, and then make yourself a blue belt, then a purple belt. And then all of a sudden you got this finished product, which is essentially the black belt thing. But it took you several months, if not years, to get to that point, which is beautiful. Like, literally none of us knew that until Joe Rogan's podcast. Like, we just assumed you just said shit and everybody laughed. That's it. Right? Yeah. And then when you hear you got to work it out, that's what we do. Like, we learn a technique, we got to work it out, right? It's beautiful.
A good comic makes it look easy, though. You watch a guy on TV, you're like, I can do that shit. Yeah. But, I've been booed off stage. I've been fired. I've had bad weeks. It's like jujitsu. Not every day you're going to be just tapping everybody out at will. Maybe you guys, but not me anyway.
No.
And I was thinking about this the other day, and it's kind of funny that Butch was talking about it like this, but I was wondering why people compete. Right? Or just do anything in general where there is failure. Like, why do people put themselves in positions where they could fail? And everybody wants to revert back. And even myself, I revert back to the Teddy Roosevelt, it's not the critic that matters, but the man that's in the arena, right? We've all heard these quotes. And I was wondering about this the other day. Like, I hated every second of training. There wasn't a part of training that I enjoyed. And then even worse than that was all of my losses. So if I had a loss, I hated those, but I would still put myself out there. And I was trying to figure out, like, why did I do it? And I'm sure it's got to be the same. And I've performed musically in front of people. I play, like Butch was saying, I play guitar, and I have no problem getting on stage. And I think the exhilaration is not necessarily in the win, but it's avoiding the loss.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, the more I thought about this, the more I was like, it's not, winning is nice. And I'm not saying it's that, I'm not trying to downplay the win, but there is something about coming out the other side knowing that it could have gone up in flames that I love. And is it that way with comedy? Because if you, like you said, if you have a shit night, you eat shit, you go home and you're like, what the fuck have I done with my life? Like, I've had that with jujitsu. Like, why am I even doing this? I suck at this. The days that I don't lose, I'm happy because I don't lose.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I've seen like situations, man, there's a lot of parallels between jujitsu and comedy now that I'm really thinking about it. But like, you'll see a tough crowd and every comic's eating it. And I'm like, man, I've got to be the guy that breaks this crowd. Got to do. And when it happens, you feel like you just beat Goliath and you're David or something. It's like when you're a purple belt and you tap out a brown or a black belt. I'm sure it's the same feeling where you just did kind of the impossible. Before you did that, you didn't know you could do it. Like, I've seen some nights where I thought nobody's going to get this crowd. And then I did. And then I'm like, oh, I'm the best comedian on the planet. Joe Rogan doesn't know shit about comedy. Then the next night I'll eat my dick on stage for 30 minutes and I'll be like, no, I'm about right where I'm supposed to be.
It's a reminder. It's a reminder. Well, and that's now, do you ever, because and I've talked to other people, like, I would compete, and honestly, like, when I'm done, there's a relief. And like, the relief is that it's over, but also, like, if I won the match, the relief is that I didn't lose. And that was somehow, that's I don't know what it is in my head that makes the not losing the exciting. The winning I don't give two shits about the winning. It's the not losing.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with comedy. Not eating it is it's nice to just not suck.
I've got to get into it with the Hollywood stuff, and we're gonna move to movies and stuff. I have to know, because I don't know shit about making a movie. What the hell does a key grip do?
You know, I'm not sure. That's a production side thing. I know that, but I don't know. I don't think I met the key grip. Is that like a fluffer or something, you think? I don't know.
That's what I was wondering. Is he the guy that's just back, his powdery noses? What the fuck is a key grip?
I
What makes
feel like that's the
better?
person. I'm sorry. I feel like that's the person that holds the microphone or something like that. I'm pretty sure. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing it out there.
Why get that key in his name? There's a regular grip. There's a dolly grip. What the fuck is a dolly grip? Like you read these credits, I don't know what the hell any of them are. And I produce shit in New York and I couldn't name any of that shit. I don't know.
So what's it like working on a movie? How much time did you have, like, when you were doing these movies for Adam Sandler and Rob Schneider? Like, how much time were you on set, and what was that like? What was the experience like?
Oh, it was awesome. It was crazy. It was like the best time of my life. The lady I told you about that was my manager, she said, you got an audition at Sony, and this was for The Animal. Ed Asner was in it, and a lot of famous people were in that film. So I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get this role. There's no way. I'm sure they got the best actors. I've never even been in a movie. There's no way I'm going to get. I don't even have a SAG card. But I go in and they said, you got to read for the producers. And I'm like, okay, cool. I sit down in this office. There's dogs running around in the office. I'm like, what the hell? Somebody's dogs are in here. And it's Adam Sandler sitting across from me, and his dogs are running around. And I'm like, I was already nervous, but whatever energy I brought, they liked it, and they booked me for that film. So I do the film, and I'm like, well, and by the way, there's nothing like a premiere party to a Hollywood movie. I never saw any shit like that in my life. Like, everything was 5-star from top to bottom. It was incredible. But then I got another audition for a thing called The Hot Chick with Rachel McAdams, and Sandler was in it, Schneider, of course. And I said, well, you know, they liked me the first time. I'll see what they want. Well, I run into Rob Schneider a few months before it, and he's like, oh, dude, you got it. You got the role. Don't worry. Just, you got it. And I'm like, do I? But I did. I got it. I left 5 lines in it. I didn't have huge roles, but I had funny roles. They always gave me some funny shit. They were very generous in that respect. But it's pressure. Like, it's a movie set, man. And like I said, I really might have been in a little in over my head at the time. But I remember one day, I don't want to say what project it was, but this girl fucked up some lines, and the director's yelling at her. And so I got freaked out, and I'm like, oh shit, I better know my shit by the book. I better know word for word. They're not going to let me improvise on this one, I bet. So I was freaked out. And they ended up just letting me do my thing anyway. Like, they made me do it on the page, but then they said, I'll do it a few times, just however you want. So they gave me some liberty that they didn't give that person, but it scared the shit out of me. I didn't want to be the guy on the set that we just spent $10,000 because you fucked up the line. I didn't want to be the guy on that end. But the parties were crazy, man. The premiere parties, every movie star you can name just hanging out. Like, it's very intimidating. But
I can imagine. Well, and as far as, like, when you're doing those big movies, and you're obviously, Adam Sandler is about as big as it gets when it comes to comedy movies. Everybody in the industry is going to be there. So it makes sense that it's there. What is that like when are you just, because if it was me, I would just be standing, I'd be a wallflower. I would try and blend in with the wall and, like, hope nobody sees me and just let me watch what happens here.
Well, it's Hollywood. So, I mean, anytime you're at a Hollywood party with a bunch of people that are in the industry, you'll be talking to them like this. You'll have your drink and they'll be like this, looking for the next big star to come in. Who are you? Who were you? Yeah. Oh, you had 5 lines? Okay, I got it. And they'll take off. But I wasn't, yeah, I was pretty, I saw like some actors that like I knew I had seen them in shit, but I didn't know their name. I met a lot of those people and I'm like, hey, you're that guy. Like, you don't know what to say. It's so awkward. I think I tried to hit on Rachel McAdams actually. And she just wasn't, she was like, who are you? And I said, that's about the response I expected.
But hey, yeah, I mean, you miss all the shots you don't take.
Yeah, I missed that one.
So
yeah, but it was awesome.
Are you in line for, so let me preface this with like, I have a friend, and he's a big old guy, like bigger than me. He's played in NFL for a while. I can't remember his defensive line. I'm pretty sure his defensive line played 49ers, but anyway, he's a big old dude. And then his career in the NFL, didn't work out. And then he was like, I guess I'll be in movies, right? Just because that's the, I guess, next logical step. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But somehow he ended up being in line for these Adam Sandler movies. I don't know how or why. And I think similar situation. He might have been in 1 or 2, but he was telling me a story not long ago, a couple this year actually, but we were somewhere and he was like, they told me, he's like, I was out playing basketball somewhere and they told me just wait here. And then Adam Sandler came, and I guess that's what he does on these sets. He plays a lot of basketball. So it was just those two. And then he was like, hey man, talking to my friend, he was like, so why are you here? And he was like, well, I don't know. I played in the NFL. They said this is the next step. Like, this is why I'm here. They said to be in this movie. I'm meeting you. And I guess Adam Sandler just went through some stuff. And then I don't know the whole story, but I think it bottom line was Adam was like, and there's other stuff for you. You don't need to be here. Like, you shouldn't be here. And I don't think he meant in a weird way. Like, you're not worthy of this role, but he was like, there's other stuff you could do. And then now my same friend, the one that was telling me the story, is like one of the heads of a heads of a Fortune 500 company, and like would be several steps ahead of me in that same company. And that's why he was telling the story. It was like, here's where I thought I was going to go after a failed NFL attempt where, he at least made the NFL, and, he thought he was going to be in movies. And then Adam Sandler was like, hey man, like, you shouldn't, like, I think I see better things for you. And that could be a bad thing, could not be or it could be a good thing. But ultimately he's like a high up manager in a Fortune 500 company.
Wow.
And doing different stuff, but it's opposite.
You think Sandler just read that in him and his energy and said, no, this guy's going to do something special, or because of the head of a Fortune 500 company? That's like,
yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I wish I had a better ending to the story after I started talking it, but I remember it was funny because our private conversation went all over the place, which included, and this is a lot of stuff that involved you, but he's talking about how obviously Rob Schneider's daughter became a famous singer, right?
Yeah.
He talked about that too, but not exactly on the up and up, just saying that, like, I'm trying to avoid talking bad stuff, but he wasn't saying nothing bad, just saying, like, I think Rob knew that during his movie career, maybe he wasn't the best dad and he could have made stuff up and blah blah blah, like whatever. I don't know. I'm not, like, I don't want to, obviously I've not said my friend's name either, but it was just like, we talked about every aspect of life, and some of it was like, like Rob Schneider has problems too, right? That he is working through, maybe not being the best dad, maybe doing like and like this kind of stuff. But it was just funny because he was saying how he knew her since she was a young lady, like maybe teens, and now she's this epic singer that's making stuff happen, and how his career didn't happen how he thought it would be, but he was lucky to be here. And it was just interesting because, like, I guess what's interesting is he had a thought of things happening a certain way and they turned out differently, which is cool too, right? Like, but it's cool, like, and that's what, and I don't remember what started the conversation, but I think that he and I had a similar projection, right? I played football, not as big as him, but then I was an extra in a couple movies, and I thought I was going to be something too, and clearly not, because then I figured out extras don't make any money. And then I was like reading stuff, and they're like, yeah, you could be an extra in this movie. And then I'm like, so literally I have to sit there for days on end and make $4 an hour. That sounds wonderful. Like, that's not going to work either, right? But it's just wild how those things are all, and obviously you made it a bigger thing, but it's crazy how we get to view that on the outside, and then what's involved with it, and whether you get to be part of it or not. Like, obviously you have, like, it takes a lot of effort. Like, I think there's a lot of people that think, hey, I can be a movie star. You do nothing, right? Like I can do that. And then here's the funny thing. I was an extra in a movie called Foxcatcher. That's right up our alley. And the scenes that I was in was all about MMA. And that's why they picked me, right? It was like right up my alley, meaning
Nice.
that I do MMA. I'm involved in MMA. And the first thing they give me was Channing Tatum was fighting some guy, and I was supposed to just chant USA, USA. I couldn't even do that because I was like, I can't pretend I'm happy. There's not even a fight going on, like, right? So they would be like, all right, take one. And then I'd be like, USA, USA. And then after like 20 seconds, it would start fading. I was like, it's like a dive bomber. I'm like, well, this is so fucking boring. This is retarded. This is not even happening. How can I be excited about this? And it was something I was involved in. And then we shot that 10-second scene for like hours upon hours upon hours. And I was like even my friends that were there, they're like, man, I think I'm just going to go home. Like, this is stupid. And they were like, if you go home, like you can't go home. Like, I forget why they said we couldn't go home, but my friends were like, they were ready to bail. And this is something that we could do. It was right up our wheelhouse, and we still sucked at it. So now that was the day that I was like, all those preconceived notions of me being something, they're out the window, because I'm not good at even the thing that I do. I can't even pretend to cheer for MMA. Like what am I going to do? You know?
Did the director talk to you directly about that? Did the director come up to you and say, hey man, this is what we need, and explain to you and maybe try to get that happiness out of you? Or did they just, they're just like,
probably a little bit, like, I'm not as important as you on that scene, but a little bit. Yeah. Like, I think I had a certain look to me. So like, out of the 900 plus extras, they honestly did come to me a bunch of times and like put me in scenes where I think they thought I could excel, because they would look at me and I'm 6'6", 250, whatever. Like, I had a different look than everybody else. But then everything they put me in, I feel like a giant failure. Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, I probably had it in me for about 20 seconds. And then I'm like, we got to do this for another 2 hours. Well, this is stupid. I can't possibly do this, right? Like, unbelievable, right? Which then I got offered a bunch of other things, again, just extra. So let's not pretend I was going to be famous. But I was like, man, there's no way that I can go, even things that I thought I could do. Like, that I got offers for like Thug. You know, like, you'd be great Thug. Like, that's pretty easy, right? And I was like, there's no way. Like, I can't put somebody in this fucking trunk of this car. I'm not that good. Like, for 16 hours, I'm gonna put this guy in the trunk. There's no way. So then anyway, I didn't do it. So,
well,
like, and I'm
regardless,
not saying that to try to like get clout or anything. I'm just saying it's a lot harder than what you think. Like, I got in.
Butch froze on us.
Still struggling. So when you talk, I'm like, God, man, that's it's amazing that the lines that, because they looked at me and they're like, I think you got something. Like, let's give you a couple lines, and then I do them, and they're like, yeah, never mind. Let's move on. Let's just move on to the next guy.
Well, I think Butch would have been an amazing Thug number 2.
yeah, man.
Yeah, credits would have been anything. Yeah, Thug number 2, Butch Hiles, right? Like, it just didn't work out for me.
What was your experience as far as like being on set? Do you have similar experiences where it's like the same scene for hours or anything like that? Or is it like, hey, we do this 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 or 6 times, and then move on to the next thing?
They didn't do it. Some directors will have you do the same shit, and depending on what you're shooting, it can be grueling like that. But I noticed, like, both the Sandler produced films, they were pretty efficient, man. They didn't shoot the same thing 1,000 times, unless one day I was tied to this chair getting robbed, and the hot chick, and they had me try a few things, just there was guys feeding me lines, you know, writers yelling, "Hey, say this," you know, while you're getting robbed. So there was some of that. They would have me improvise. We did that. I think we taped a lot that day, but for the most part, dude, they kept shit moving. But I've been on sets where it's just like he says, you're doing the same minute scene over and over and over, and it can be brutal, but you know, that shit happens. Sometimes they don't get the shot, or it's something that they just can't get quite right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I thought it was fascinating. Like they would shoot a scene, and it literally may be 30 seconds, but then in my experience, for example, it'd be Channing Tatum, the director, and somebody else would watch the scene again, and then they'd give let's shoot it again, right? Same scene, right? And again, like as me, I'm like, I think nothing changed. Like, what are you doing? You know, because it would be the same thing over and over. Like, but it's just funny. Like, you know, again, it was I think the scenes I was in are so goofy, you know, which is, you know, because I'm not a real actor like yourself, but it was like Channing was mounted on somebody just punching them. That's pretty freaking easy, right? And I'm just yelling USA, USA, and then they're like, that was awful, let's do it again. How else can I say USA? There's no other way for me to possibly say this. And if we do it 20 more times, my enthusiasm just keeps going down. Like we're not going to change this. Like we might need to cut me out of this thing. But and then on top of that, you know, for me at least, which was funny, you know, the movie comes out, so I'm like, all right, man, I was there for 30 some hours, you know, filming us all day. So if you freeze framed it, I might have been in it like an eighth of a second if you're really good and you really freeze frame it and you knew exactly who I was, like, you know what I mean, which only I know, you know, like but my point is with the story is it's so complicated, which was I'm actually thankful that I went through, because I think you need that, like just like you said with comedy, is that everybody thinks you can do it because it's just talking. Like I can talk, I can do that, I can say a joke. And then you realize like you have to craft stuff, you have to come up with stuff, you have to make it happen. And that's the same with acting. You think you can do, I can pretend to be anybody, not really, right? Like you can't. Like even in my world, I can pretend like I am an MMA person. If I can't even pretend to be an MMA person, immediately I know that I cannot ever act. Because if you're giving me the thing, like that's like somebody saying, why don't you just go out and be Butch Hiles? Okay. And then I go out and be Butch Hiles, and they're like, you know what? We need to do that again because you are not the Butch Hiles I thought you were. That's essentially what happened to me. You know, like, so only reason I bring that up, one, is a fun story, but like, I want to know, like, it is so complicated to do. Like, we kind of brush over that stuff. It's so complicated. It really is. And the fact that you could do that and that you're getting lines and doing that stuff is like actually more amazing than you think. I think for other people listening, it's like, it's not an easy process, man. None of this is easy. So
no,
yeah,
I actually trained acting at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute in Los Angeles, and I was in cold reading classes. I was during the day when I wasn't working, I was crafting my acting. So I kind of knew what I was doing going in. I felt pretty comfortable with the acting side of it. All those SNL guys are trained pretty well, because I've worked with a lot of them now, and I'm always surprised at how efficient they are as actors. Like they could just pick up a script and know that shit quickly. It takes me all day to memorize something. These guys absorb it so fast. I got to work with Jim Brewer on some sketches, some comedy sketches. I got to direct, produce, write, act with them. And you could just tell there's a big difference between those Saturday Night Live trained actors that have been through that process, because SNL's brutal. You talk about pressure, a live show. I mean, it's incredible, and nothing rattles them. They're incredible actors. I'm always impressed. I'm pretty lucky to have gotten to work with guys like that, and I've learned a lot just being around those guys. It kind of rubs off on you. It's amazing.
Well, I think, and on top of that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the part that people don't know is if you're on SNL and you come up with a skit and they accept it, that's not the end. that's your baby, you essentially have to produce it, meaning that you came up with a skit, now you're running on an SNL, you've got to come up with the wardrobe, you've got to set the skit, you have to tell people what to do. Like, there's not another group doing that. They actually literally give you the reins for that. So on top of that, like you would think that's a home run, but that's like another ball of work to do on top of that, right? That I don't think people necessarily know that happens. That's like a big responsibility, because it's got to hit a home run. You had a great ideal, now it's time to make that ideal happen, right?
Yeah, and some of them are not going to work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, go ahead.
I'm working on a sketch show now called That Show Tonight, and we run into that. You know, some of the stuff kills, and then some of it we put a lot of producing into it and a lot of work into it, and they don't, for some whatever reason, they fall flat. But the SNL guys, boy, most of their shit hits. When we had Jim Brewer on the show, like everything he did was great. He knocked everything out of the park. It was awesome.
Well, and I think that it makes sense that a lot of those guys went on to have success, you know, as far as like Chris Farley with Tommy Boy and Black Sheep and all the movies that he did. Then you have Adam, obviously, you know, the line of movies. I mean, so many movies he's got. It makes sense that if they were doing all that production stuff at SNL, and if they were doing wardrobe and writing lines and understanding how to get all of that in one scene in 1 week, because that's the other thing. Like, it's a weekly show.
Right.
You've got 6 days. We sit down, and they've talked about it. You sit down Indian style in the pitch room, and you say, "This is my idea," and they're like, "We like it. Go ahead and flesh it out." And okay, well, now I've got to take my idea and make sure I've got all the lines. And then we run through it with wardrobe and all that stuff. And if it works, now I have to get it ready for the live show. And so it would make sense that a Sandler production is going to run efficient, because he was trained to get that shit ready in 1 week. You know, I mean, that's like being, if you're a stand-up, like prepping a new minute every week, you know, that's a lot of work in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. Our show, That Show Tonight, thatshowtonight.com. We do a live show like once a month in New York, a live sketch show. And it's terrifying, because, you know, I fucked up lines, and luckily I have good enough actors around me that if I mess something up, they're good at improvising and making it work. But it's, man, in front of a live crowd, you have to have that shit memorized. And it's scary, man. It's terrible.
It's blitzkrieg theater.
Yeah, it's ballsy. I don't know. My buddy Michael Loftus runs the operation, and I'm like, man, you're a wild dude wanting to do live sketch comedy. That's crazy.
Well, so you're doing the sketch comedy, and you said you'd also, you know, write scripts and stuff. What is that like, trying to pitch scripts, trying to get something produced? Maybe kind of go into that a little bit.
Well, it depends on the project. We actually got a pilot deal with the History Channel, the same guys I'm working with now, and that was like, I don't know how many meetings. That I wasn't really highly involved in those meetings, but we had to write a pilot episode for a history comedy show. And we actually got pretty big ratings. I was kind of shocked they didn't pick up the show. I don't know if it was the content or something, but that was pressure too. We had a budget and some really big, I forget the guy's name, pretty big director guy on the set that shot segments, and it was incredible. But that whole process, I sadly don't know much about the pitching. I've sort of just lucked my way into a lot of shit. I've never really just sat down and, I think I did. I pitched a show a couple times. I pitched to Sandler before I even worked for him. I pitched something to his company at Sony, a script idea that they didn't end up using. but no, I usually get like, I've been invited to shit mostly and had to audition. I don't know much about the pitching process, but I imagine it's probably pretty stressful too. But my buddy Loftus has done a lot of it, where he's pitched ideas all over Hollywood, and some shit they take, some shit they don't. But I imagine it's probably pretty stressful.
It has to be stressful.
Let me ask you this, if you guys don't mind. So I don't know if this is a story I heard on a podcast. I think it is, but somebody was saying, and again, I think this was on a previous podcast, but somebody was saying they gave a pitch to Adam Sandler's people. It wasn't him. And the guy said, "Hey man, I think you should keep this for yourself." And the point of that story was, I think they're saying how cool Adam's people were, right? Meaning that they're like, yeah, this is a great idea, and I think Adam, he would use it, but why are you giving it to us? Like, why don't you do it for yourself, right? And again, I think this is probably from another podcast, but I think like I remember that, and I think I remember that because that's cool, right? Like that those people are like took a good ideal that they could have made money off of and said, hey man, like you should probably keep this for yourself. Like you could be something. And then maybe if you did this, then, you could get those things. And I guess that's why that story sticks with me. And again, it's not my story, but it's from something else. But I think, obviously you lucked out and we're with really good people. And it's the same story I heard from my friend, that those people are really cool. But that's another cool thing, because whether it's training or, the stuff we're talking about now, is like we kind of started that off like where you're in Columbus, when you are training, you're with that Robin and you end up with really good people. But that's part of the other thing, is that you're only as good as the people around you. And that also goes with people encouraging you to be better, encouraging you to take your own ideals and make them, or put them into fruition, right? So I think, just meeting you now, that you've been lucky, and you've admitted that, right? Like, meaning that you met all these great people at the right time and things kind of worked out, and some of it's hard work, and that some of it's, it's not just luck, it's that you're an awesome person, but you put that all together and you've got something. And I think that's awesome too. Like, meaning that there's no secret sauce to this whole conversation that we're talking about, right? Some of it is just the right place, the right time. Some of it is hard work. Some of it is you have God-given talent to be funny in your right place, right time. But I also want to say that I don't underscore that, meaning that it's amazing. Like, I like all of us, like saying, some of it is putting in the work first and then being in the right place at the right time, right? Opportunities are huge, right?
I mean, the reason I got in those movies is because I was busting my ass doing comedy clubs every night, all night, nonstop. I was relentless, and that put me in that position to get lucky. I would not, if I'd been working that hard and I would have blown off that gig or not gone or whatever, I would have never got the opportunity. But it's because I was working my ass off. Because I never really understood that saying until now we're talking about it. But hard work equals luck. Isn't there a saying like that or something?
Yeah.
Like hard work to get lucky.
Well, okay. I think it is. Opportunity is where hard work meets opportunity, or opportunity is hard work. Perspiration meets preparation.
All right. Preparation.
Preparation H
luck
applied to the whole.
Meets, right. That's it. Whole preparation H to the whole meets luck. That's thank you.
Everyone should. We're all dumber for what we have just said.
Yeah.
I don't know. My wife's if I repeat that, my wife will think I'm fucking smart. So I'm going to repeat that later. And then she'll be like, God damn, I'm so lucky I married you. At least this is how I view the conversation. It may not work that way, but that's how I view it.
What every wife wants to hear on Valentine's Day is preparation H meets the whole.
I can't believe your wives are letting you do a podcast on Valentine's Day.
Wives for how much longer?
Yeah. They also may have other boyfriends, so they're fine. They're good.
Oh, so they're good.
Just a couple of cucks here.
Yeah. It's all good. So anyway, here's one question I was wondering. So I know you said earlier, do you live in Ohio still or currently or no, or not really?
Yeah. No, yeah.
And what did you just say? Like where at do you live?
Columbus.
Oh, okay. So I'm from Cleveland. That's why, like, I was,
Cool,
when
man.
you're talking about the earlier stories. That's what I was thinking. Cause I was like, those are my people. Like,
Yeah.
which, yeah, you're right. Those clubs are kind of like, that was like, I was probably, 1995 when I should have, when I graduated high school, I was probably 18, 19. So I haven't lived there since then, but it's wild, wild place. You know what I mean? Like, or can be, right? How is, Columbus versus Cleveland? Are they similar or the same kind of?
Cleveland's rougher around, but I still love Cleveland. I mean, but Cleveland's rougher than Columbus, I think. I mean, that's my experience.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's where I'm from. And that's what I like. We go back. I've been to more Cleveland stuff since I moved away because I have 3 boys now, and I take them to Browns games, Indians games, Cavs games more than I did when I lived there, which is a shame. That's actually what happens when you live in a city. It's like that stuff's not a big deal. I can do that anytime. And then you move away and you just blew all those opportunities. And now I'm there all the freaking time with my kids, which is cool too. It's like I'm reliving my childhood through them in a weird way. But yeah, I think it's, and I don't think when I lived there wasn't a big comedy scene, but there could have been because I was also kind of young, right? And I wasn't into stuff like where do you think the scene's the best in Ohio? Weird question, but it's just because I'm curious.
Ohio in general, I don't even want to say this on the podcast. I hope no comedians are listening to this, but Ohio's a great place if you want to be a comedian. You got several clubs in Cleveland. You got a couple in Cincinnati. You got Dayton is on the up. I think there's a couple in Dayton, and Chappelle's about to open one in Dayton. Then you got Indianapolis not far away. I mean, it's a great place if you want to get a lot of gigs. If you can bust your ass, Ohio's got a good comedy scene. A lot of great comics come out of Ohio too. I'm surprised at how many great comedians are in Ohio, live in the state.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be at the show really just within the last 6 months, but it was Joe Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe, and then special guest Dave Chappelle, right? So it's pretty awesome. Like I would have fun regardless. And then the fact that Dave Chappelle showed up was, obviously an added bonus, but it was a freaking awesome night. And that was at like Ohio State's like basketball stadium probably or something like that. But anyways, freaking amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, and that's the cool thing too, is like Dave Chappelle, like, how do you feel about him? Like, do you feel, is he our Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, or, of our generation, or what?
I think he's much different than them, but also great. I would be psyched to see Tony. How do you say his name? Hinchcliffe.
I think it's Hinchcliffe. Or Gary, you can.
That guy. Every time I see that guy on social media, he's like the funniest guy. His show, he's got that this
Kill Tony.
Fucking genius, man. I caught some of that. That's to me great comedy. What he does. I don't know the guy that well, but every time I see him, it just blows my mind. I'm like, that guy. What he does is beautiful.
Well, he's another Youngstown boy too. He's another Ohioan. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I'm telling you, funny guys come out of Ohio, man.
Yeah. And what have you guys noticed this Ohio hate that is online lately?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is up with that? Is it just because Ohio is that much better than everywhere else? I think it's a jealousy thing.
It's a bunch of Floridians that conspired to make it happen because they got sick of being made fun of so hard. And they said, no, this is some Ohio shit now. No, you can't blame all of Ohio. Yeah, we got our issues, but we're pretty together, I think. Remember when our river caught on fire? That's what really fucked it up.
Again, those are my people. That was the Cuyahoga River, right? Like,
how does a catch on fire? That's not even supposed to happen. but we made it happen in Ohio because we're fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. The mistake on the lake, right?
Man. Now we got trains exploding with chemicals. We're just, I
Much
don't know.
more important things, right? You know, but nonetheless, I agree. Like, so Tony Hinchcliffe,
Genius.
yeah, I've seen him live like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, and he keeps getting better and better. I mean, the guy, you're right. In this, you know, another former Ohio wrestler, you know, to keep it on with our brand, you know, with the jiu-jitsu and type stuff, right? Like, amazing guy. I mean, and it's funny because the first time I saw him, I was like, well, there's a gay guy.
Yeah, he's not.
But he's 100% not gay. He just has a lisp, or something like that, right? But regardless, I mean, the guy is amazing. So to see him, which I assume that's why they did in Columbus, right? Because they had him and they brought Dave Chappelle from there. And I mean, the pop that when Dave Chappelle came out, like, it was unreal.
I bet.
I mean, it was freaking unreal. And they did like probably 20-30 minutes of unscripted comedy, because I think, like, the way I understand that whole story was, you know, they asked Dave to come on with them. You know, it's just those two. And they said, hey man, we're in Columbus, why don't you come? And he didn't respond until like right before the show. And he finally like showed up. So nothing was set, right? And he just came up, and I'll be honest, you know, obviously I love Dave Chappelle, but his comedy was unreal. Like the way that he draws you in where you don't even know, like the way he tells a story, right? Like you're mesmerized. You go along with the ride, right? And then it's just bam, 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 joke after joke. And I could even tell, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but that night it seemed like new material, like that he was thinking of it up, because I've never heard of it. It was like brand new stuff to me. As a person that's a budding person that really enjoys comedy, you know, comedy, and that hopes that I could do it, it's just to watch that whole thing, I was amazed, right? Like when I left, I was like, man, like there's levels to this shit, right? And that's what we say with MMA and jiu-jitsu and everything else. They're like, that's like when you run into, like, we all play basketball, and then you run into Michael Jordan or LeBron, and you're like, oh shit, there's levels to this shit. I play basketball too, but those guys, they're at a different level, right? And it's the same with that. It's like, yeah, I can say some shit that's pretty funny, and some people laugh, and depending on the setting, but man, like everything Dave Chappelle says is funny. Everything, right?
Well, and I would say that also that this is kind of where I think that jiu-jitsu again kind of mimics comedy. Is like some of the funniest comedians I've seen live have been guys I'd never heard of. I remember I went to see Artie, and he was in we happened to be in Atlantic City, and Artie was playing at a casino, so we went to see Artie Lang, and one of his opening acts was one of the funniest. And of course I was drunk, so I never wrote down his name or remembered who he was or anything, but I just remember him, like the jokes he had, his you know, his white guy with a black girlfriend, and like all of his shitting on himself, deprecating humor. Like it was some of the funniest stuff that I'd ever heard. And nobody's heard of that guy. And just as much as you were roped into everything that Dave was saying, I think there are a lot of comedians out there that people don't know right now that you would have the same experience. And it kind of comes back to that opportunity thing where it's just waiting. They're sizzling, right? They're under the hot lamp, ready to be served, and they just haven't gotten served yet. And I'm hoping that they get out there before, you know, they die at the pass. We don't want that to happen. But and I hope people are going out to see comedy, and I hope people, you know, we're in a post-COVID now. I want people to go back out and start living life. But going to comedy is one of my favorite things. You know, I've seen so many comedians, and honestly, the best comedy, as much fun as it is to see comedians in, you know, big venues. And if you're a fan of Joe Rogan and seeing guys like that, it's great. But the best comedy is still in a club. There's no better place to see comedy than, you know, 200 other people and a low ceiling and one guy on a small stage. It's the best way to see comedy. There's no better way to see it.
Yeah, I love little rooms like that, mom and pop shop rooms, like the comedy, the Funny Stop in Akron, Ohio. Little room, low ceiling, nothing fancy, beautiful blue collar room. That I love that. I'd much rather play that atmosphere than like a big theater. Theater gigs kind of suck, but these big guys got to do it. You know, you do one theater gig or you do six gigs at the club. Just it doesn't, they got to do it. But I love the little rooms, man. That's, you can't beat it.
And as an audience member, I think it's so much better. You're closer. You're not watching him on a screen. You're so much closer. Like you feel more like the act. You're like not that you're as an audience member, that not that you're a part of the act, but the act is more intimate. You know, and it's the difference between seeing a movie and going and seeing theater. You know, having it done in front of you live up close, it feels different. And there's something about being in a comedy club, even if it's guys who are unknown, even if it's, somebody just doing a 10-minute spot for somebody as an opener. Like it's so much better to see comedy that way. And I think we're getting there. I think we're getting back to, especially this. And like we said, we're not going to try and get political or anything like that, but there was a time where it was, aside from COVID, that like everybody has to watch what they say to not get canceled and stuff like that. And I think we're turning a corner where everybody is getting a little more free and everybody's ready to laugh. And I hope people are going to small comedy clubs to see stuff like that, because it's the best way to see it.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I like the little rooms, man.
It's the best. I before we go, and we've had you for a little while now, but before we go, I got to ask, what prompted you to make maybe the most insane jiu-jitsu video of all time and asking Helson Gracie to a little match as a white belt?
Well, here's the other thing. Let me preface this by explain it to me, because I've never seen it. So that will explain it to everybody else. That'll be perfect.
Well, I'm going to start first by telling like people who don't know Helson Gracie, like he's not exactly known for his
he's
fun-loving nature. He's a nice guy. I don't want to say that he's not a nice guy, but he's not exactly known for his fun-loving, jokey nature. That's not really who he is.
He's the gangster of the Gracie family.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I bring something out of him. Because he's always joking around with me. He seems like maybe he's different with me, but maybe I got him to put his guard down that day. I think I'm not sure what happened, but I remember saying, I kept shit talking him. I kept telling him I was going to fuck him up, but just joking. And he knew I was kidding, but I kept telling him, dude, you don't want to roll with me. I'll fuck you up, And then Robin kept saying, let's videotape it. Why don't you roll with him? It'll be funny. Let's videotape it. And then time came and they said, we're going to do it. We're going to videotape you rolling with Helson. And I looked at Helson and I said, hey, I was just kidding. I'm not going to roll with you, dude. And he said, why not? And I said, because I'll get my arm broken. I said, I'm like the worst guy ever. I suck at jujitsu. I've never even tapped anybody out. And he said, oh man, let's just have some fun and roll with me. And so we went with it, and he was totally cool. He definitely didn't make me look as bad as I think he could have. He was just sort of, he kept it playful, which was nice of him. And it was awesome, man. It was like, I wish I knew more about jujitsu at the time, though. I really didn't know anything, what I was doing whatsoever. I would have at least liked to have known something. I'd like to roll with him again, at least now, knowing something at all about it. I was clueless when we shot that. I knew nothing.
What would you do now that you didn't do then?
Oh, I'd fuck him up. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would not.
Did you stick your finger in his butt, or
That's my number one weapon. If you want to hear a story, I shit my pants in jujitsu class once. If you want to hear a really good story.
Yeah, I do.
Well, there's a guy named Salah Salim. I don't know if you ever heard of this.
Salah. I love Salah. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Great guy.
This sounds like a made up name. Is this a real person?
Real guy. He's been on Fight to Win. He's I'm sure he's a black belt now, but he's an amazing guy, amazing practitioner. I've trained with him a few times. But yeah, Salah's a good guy.
Okay.
Real good. Well, we were working on, I think he was coaching a basic fundamentals class. And it's the one day, at the time, women didn't show up to our school at all. Like it was, now they're starting to, but at the time there was none. And this is the one day where this beautiful girl is watching the class with my luck. And he does knee on belly. And I had eaten Bob Evans earlier.
Yeah.
And he puts his knee in my belly, and I was like, oh no, man, not in front of this girl. I said, Salah, you got to stop. And he stopped for a minute, and then he kept going. And I went back to, I was very embarrassed. And some guy on the way out said, hey, you finally got your brown belt. I didn't think that was very funny. But yeah, well, I think that happens more often than we like to admit. Farting, shitting, stuff like that in jujitsu. It happens, right? I'm not alone.
You're not alone. I actually made a video about this one time when I was traveling. I was kind of between camps as far as like who I was training under, and I was traveling a lot to Grove City Jiu-Jitsu up there with Dave Friedrich, and I'd made a video about the pre-jiu-jitsu dump and how important it was to take that. You don't want to go into as a visitor into a place and slop up the bowl 10 minutes before you jump on the mat, right? So be a gentleman, stop at the 7-Eleven before you get there, expel all the demons, and then go in and get the shit kicked out of you.
Yeah. Happens.
It happens.
I got it. Do you train? Where are you training these days?
So I'm in North Carolina, a small little gym. It actually happened. My wife got a job down here, opportunity that we couldn't pass up. And it, like COVID, the kids were out of school for a couple of years. We had always promised that we weren't going to move the kids, change schools and all that stuff, but they were out of school for 2 years. So they were basically going to a new school when they went back anyway. So we was like, okay, if we're going to move, we're going to move now. The opportunity was right for us. So we moved down here. Just so happened that I make 3 turns. I take a left, a right, and a left, and I'm at jiu-jitsu.
Hell yeah.
And so I've been under Butch for about 5-6 years now, I think, something like that. Yeah. Somewhere around there. I don't know. We've been friends for a while, but man, it might even be longer than that. Shit, I gotta go look. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, regardless. So I started training there, and I was like, hey, I just want you to know that I'm a Butch Heil student. I'm going to stay a Butch Heil student. I just need a place to train. At this time, I just got my brown belt, and they were like, yeah, that's cool. Well, you can train here. And then that became them asking me questions about my technique. And I'm a competitor. I've done a lot of competitions. I'm okay at jiu-jitsu. I'm pretty good. And so I would teach them some stuff, and they were like, well, why don't you teach it was run by a purple belt. It was a purple belt instructor at this small school. And they was like, well, why don't you teach a class, one class, once a week? It's like, yeah, I can do that for you guys. And so the one class turned into, hey, why don't we use your curriculum? And who's this Butch guy? And so now they're a Butch affiliate as well. So, but yeah, I'm training 3-4 times a week, regular. I don't compete anymore. I'm more about the family time. Competition, it takes a lot of time from family. I was training anywhere 5 to 6 nights a week, and sometimes 2 times a day. And that's a lot of hours to not, we're talking about Valentine's Day and a couple hours away from the wife, but we're talking probably 12 to 15 hours a week. If you add in the time that I was running and just doing cardio or whatever else that I was away from the family. So now it's more about just training to stay a little bit sharp. Maybe not a razor's edge, but a dull knife. I'm a serrated blade, so I need a little more effort. It's not exactly a katana anymore, but I try and keep at it.
That's awesome. Because I hadn't talked to you in a while, and I don't remember you getting your your black belt. I remember you as a brown belt, but then I had grapevine, you got a black belt, and I was like, he doesn't deserve it. He's not ready.
You're right. I wasn't. I'm still not. That imposter syndrome shit is real. It's that doesn't go away. Honestly, like, let me turn here and up.
Hell yeah.
This belt is the one that I still wish that I had, the purple belt. Butch gave me these two and I appreciate them. But the purple belt was the one where I was like, that was where I made sense out of jiu-jitsu, and I learned who I was. It's kind of like that middle, like, okay, this is my game, but also not only is this my game, this is what I want out of jiu-jitsu. And I kind of, everything about jiu-jitsu reconciled itself in purple belt for me. And so, yeah, man, it's my outlet, it's my release. I still have a regular 9 to 5, and then I go and do jiu-jitsu, a few times a week. But it's what I do to stay sane. And outside of family, I work to do jiu-jitsu. That's it.
That's awesome. Yeah, jiu-jitsu is incredible.
And it's afforded me the opportunity to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't otherwise meet, and not just jiu-jitsu guys, but community members that I wouldn't meet. I've made friends who are police officers and ex-cons and comedians and doctors and lawyers, and like all of these people that, if I had another hobby, I don't know that it would be the same kind of friendship. It's a little bit different when you're sweating in each other's mouths. That friendship's a little bit closer than playing darts or trivia night at the bar.
Yeah, somebody bleeds into your eyeball, shit like that. You're like, that's a friend for life right there.
Somebody makes you shit your pants from Neon Belly.
Yeah, it's a lot. He's a lot heavier than he looks, I'll tell you that.
But that's where I figured out I was a swallower, was jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I had a guy, overtop me, and he sweats a lot, and it came down like a waterfall right into my mouth. And I had like a decision to make. I could spit it out, or I could swallow and keep doing jiu-jitsu. And I swallowed and I did jiu-jitsu. And now I know that's where I lay. That's where I'm in this earth.
Yeah, you're a badass if you could do that.
I don't know if I'm a badass, but I know there's a category for me on YouTube, or YouPorn, not YouTube, YouPorn. There's probably a category for that.
Yeah. So you're a black belt. How many, like, do you have stripes on a black belt then?
Yeah. So I think, 4, I guess.
4. Wow, dude, you're fourth degree. Damn.
That's something. It's the most ironic belt, meaning that every stripe you get, 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree, everybody's like, congratulations. And I'm like, I literally did nothing. I just was alive. I got the next stripe because I was alive for 3 more fucking years. It's like the curse, because it's like, if Gary's like, hey, congratulations on your 4th stripe, I'm like, Gary, I just lived 4 more years than you. That's all I did. So it's like, it's cool. I like, it's cool, but it's also I feel like dog shit. Like at least when you get like a purple belt, you're like, you achieved it. You got the purple belt. Everybody's like, good job, man. And Gary worked really hard, or whoever worked really hard. But when you get like a 3rd degree in your black belt, it's fucking stupid, because they're like, congrats on your 3rd degree. It sounds great to everybody. And everybody that, like, when I'm saying this, like, the people that aren't black belts are going to be like, what a fucking, what a stupid ass retard that's saying all this stuff. But it's like, it's true. It's like, all I did was be alive. I didn't do anything. I did nothing at this point,
At this point now, right? And now being a black belt, it's kind of the same. But every promotion for us now is just a legacy promotion.
Yeah, whatever the fuck that means.
like you ever seen those awards? You ever seen those awards and they felt bad for this actor who had acted for 75 years and never won an Oscar? And then they're like, the legacy award goes to this person who doesn't really didn't do anything new, but he did a lot of stuff. And so congratulations for being alive.
It's like a key grip award.
Oh, what? Oh, what was it?
A key grip award.
The key grip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the best key grip.
You get a stripe by your time on the mat when you're a black belt, right? Like it's time measured, not achievement measured. Or am I wrong about that? Like, how do you earn a black belt stripe?
Well, supposedly, but nobody knows. Like, for example, my coach is Marcelo Montiera. It's not like he's tracking my time, right? Like it's just like 4 years are up or whatever, the 5 years are up. Here's your stripe. Like, I just want to be honest with people at this point right now. Like, I'm not doing much, I'm alive. I'm eating pizza. I'm eating some Oreos. I love ice cream, and I'm going to get another fucking stripe while you're working for your purple belt. So fuck you. That's what I want to say right now.
Hell
Yeah, it is what it is. It sucks. I'm sorry, but I want to be honest.
Well, and here's the thing. This is another thing about being a black belt is I think everybody says that they want to get a black belt, and don't get me wrong, I wanted my black belt eventually. It wasn't anything that I was completely not interested in. However, if you are belt chasing, you're never going to get there and I think that's why we lose so many people at blue belt, is because you put all of this work to get a blue belt, and then you realize that all of that work, I have to do that for probably another 8 to 10 years before I get a black belt.
Yeah.
Is it worth it to me to do that now? And so if you don't love jujitsu, then you're not going to make it to black belt. You're probably not going to make it to purple or brown belt if you don't love jujitsu. You have to fall in love with it and just keep showing up. People ask me like, what's the secret to jujitsu? How do you get better? And I'm not smart. I'm not athletic. I don't have any, maybe I've got a little bit of flexibility that is a natural ability that helps me. But outside of that, like, there's nothing special about me. I was just here more than you. That's it. And it's just like, I think anything in life, comedy, you started at 17. You've been doing it for your whole life, your whole adult life. You've been a comedian.
Yeah.
The reason you're funnier than most guys is because it's all you do. It's all you know. And you just kept showing up,
Yeah, that's it, man. I just kept showing up. That's exactly it.
Well, I think it's a great way to end the night. Jake, I'm so happy you joined us on here. Good to talk to you.
Guys, one more thing. Your black belts, have you thought about insisting that people refer to you as professor?
No, I'm waiting for my doctorate, and then I demand Dr. Hashman.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I thought about this the other day. I work at Terminex, so I kill bugs, right? That's my day job. And so I am a pest management professional. And so I was thinking that I'm going to start putting that on all of my letterhead or anything. Like, anytime I introduce myself, hi, I'm pest management professional Gary Hashman.
You should.
And I should be referred to as such. I've earned that title.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I'll call you professor if you want.
Just call me Gary, man. It's weird.
Isn't that what they call black belts in jiu-jitsu though? Professor, is that right?
Yes. Some people demand professor. I just like Gary.
Yeah.
I just like Cock Dazzler. That's my name, Cock Dazzler. That works as well.
It's hard for me. I grew up eating government cheese. It's hard for me to ask somebody to call me professor.
Yeah, but you earned it.
The government cheese?
You earned the government cheese, man. Fucking call me professor.
Government cheese is amazing, because I had that the entire time I lived in Cleveland when my grandma was growing up in the 80s, 90s. It was amazing. It was amazing. Period. The end. A lot of people don't know government cheese. Ronald Reagan, he was the man. The end.
All right. Take your word.
There's no rebuttal. It's all good.
There's nothing to say. Yeah, you checkmated me, man.
Yeah.
Jake, where can everybody find you?
Can Cadillac Comedy on TikTok, Jake Iannarino, spelling in description, Jake Iannarino, YouTube, and Instagram. If you could find me, I'm pretty much shadow banned and straight up banned everywhere, but if you can find me, I'm out there.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking your time out of your day, and I can't wait to see. We obviously didn't get into the TikTok stuff, but I'm dying over it. And I think the one that caught me the most was the aristocrat who was talking on the phone with scam callers.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that one? And it had me crying, especially when he said he would fuck your mother. And then you go, mother, he's here. He wants you to suck his dick. I was losing it. I thought it was the funniest stuff. So you guys got to check out Jake. If he's in your area, go see him. Jake Iannarino, CadillacComedy.com. Guys,
right.
It's been a fun night. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having me, guys. See you, man.
All right, take care.
All right. Thanks, guys. Love you. I'll see you tonight.
Love you, brother.